Welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast. So, 2 episodes in a row, which I know you'll all be delighted with. So we've managed to keep that consistency for 2 weeks so far. So today I want to talk about the do's and don'ts of development finance. So development finance, as any of you that follow me will know, is one of the biggest products that we deal with. It's by far the most traffic that we get through the business at the moment. And obviously being involved in developments personally as well, I think people have started to maybe look at me as being able to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So I think that's why we probably get a bit more development stuff than anything else. But doing so much development finance means that we see a lot of really great stuff. We see a lot of really bad stuff as well. So I'm going to do a do, do a don't, do a do, do a don't, and just cover as many as I can in sort of 10, 15 minutes, just a quick whistle stop tour of some of the things that we've seen recently that I think just work really well or don't work at all. So the first one is do. So the first one that I would say is get a good contractor on board. Do find a really good contractor and do a very good build cost breakdown and a very good build cost schedule as well. So I've probably covered 3 do's in one go there. But as we've only got a short period of time, we'll try and hit as many as we can. So what I mean by that is good contractor has got to be a contractor who has dealt with something of a similar scale before. If you're doing a 13 unit development, don't use a contractor who's only ever done a 2-unit development. Use a developer that's done 10, 13, 15, 20, 30, whatever. Make sure it is of a similar size to what they're used to dealing with. When I say do get a good build cost breakdown, what I mean by that is you need a proper, full, in-depth build cost breakdown, not a back of a fag packet set of numbers. If you want to run £120 a square foot, £150 a square foot, £200 a square foot, whatever, and send that to us for us to have a look at, perfect. We don't mind that at all because we can put it into our calculators. We can come back and we can say, we think that's wrong. We think that's okay. We think you've got enough skin there or enough fat in the deal to be able to kind of move some numbers about. It gives us a good barometer of whether you're on the right track or not. When it comes to actually doing the application, don't then expect us to submit that to the lender. Because if we submit to the lender that you're building at £150 a square foot, they come back and they say, well, where's your contingency? Where are your professional fees? Where's your landscaping? Where's your externals? Where's your whatever other figures you can think of, fees for X, Y, and Z? Where are they built in within this £1 a square foot model? Because these guys who are out there teaching courses, who are taking your money for you to come and sit for 2 or 3 days, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, you can build for £150 a square foot. Yeah, you probably can. But that doesn't include the landscaping outside of each of the units. That doesn't include your contingency. That doesn't include what happens if you dig into the ground and find a Viking coin and you have to come off site for 12 months, 2 years. That doesn't sort of cover, as per the last episode, what happens if you lose 300 square foot off each plot. There's so many different things that aren't included within that £1 a square foot. So yes, potentially you can build for that, but there are so many other external figures to that. And you're only ever going to find those by dealing with either a QS or if you go and actually sort of sit down with a contractor and say, well, what can you build this for? What's this going to cost me? What am I doing here? How do I fund this? Is this included? Et cetera, et cetera. My third do was to create a good build schedule. So what I mean by a good build schedule is where are you going to want the drawdowns? Where does the contractor need paying? Does he need paying monthly? Does he need paying bi-monthly? Does he want paying every 3 months? Has he got 90-day credit terms with MKM, Turnbulls? I'm trying to think of all the build contractor merchants that we use. But what are the credit facilities that they've got access to? Do they need paying that 30, 60, 90 days? What is that schedule going to look like? Have you got to put a deposit down? And it's working out all of those things. And what that build schedule does is it allows you to sit and go, right, okay, we're putting a spade in the ground in August, for example. Right, okay, well, at the end of August, the builder's going to want £60,000, £600,000, depending on the size of the deal that you're doing. Right, okay, well, I need to get the QS to come out for the development lender 2 or 3 days before that because I need to raise that money in time to then pay the builder. Because what you don't want to do is get into a situation that I've seen so many times, and this almost goes into a don't, is don't mess up your cash flow. What you don't want to do is get to a position where your builder is sat there at the end of August saying, right, you owe me, let's for round numbers say £100,000. Right, okay, great. We owe you 100 grand. Oh, but the QS isn't coming out until the 2nd of September. Right, okay, well, how are you going to pay the builder in that meantime? What you want to be doing is if you've got to pay your builder at the end of August, you want your QS coming out maybe 2, 3, 4 days, maybe even a week before that, because you've got to submit to the lender to say, right, okay, the builder wants paying £100,000. Out of that £100,000, that is broken down into these materials, this account at MKM, for example, the merchants, we've spent this much on account here, this much on account here, and fully break it down. And then the QS comes out, has a look, says, yeah, okay, I believe that you've spent £100,000 on this site. Great. Lender then releases £100,000. That comes into your account just in time to then pay the builder come the end of August. Now, that doesn't create a forward funding situation. What it creates is actually a situation where you're funding what has already been spent. So you're still funding in arrears, but you're doing it in a really clever way because you're getting the money in just before the builder needs to be paid. So you haven't got to put your hand in your pocket and go, right, there's £100,000. Then I've got to go and get the QS. Then I've got to get the money back in from the lender. It just completely destroys your cash flow. So you need to make sure that from that side of things, you are fully prepared and set up to do that build cost schedule because you need to have those drawdowns in the right place. So do have a really good build cost schedule. Don't mess up your cash flow because that is the biggest thing that hurts developers, and we've seen it no end of times. And the other one as well is don't rely, this is another don't rely on your own internal team to deal with accounts, bookkeeping, VAT returns, for example, because when you're working on a site of significant scale, you're going to have VAT that you need to claim back every month. You're going to have CIS contributions if you're the contractor as well that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to deal with all sorts of different things from a bookkeeping perspective. So get a good accountant on board because you need someone who can manage that for you. Move your VAT returns to monthly. Don't do quarterly or yearly. Move them to monthly. Again, that helps your cash flow because if you're waiting to claim all that VAT back at the end of the year, I mean, that could be a significant amount of VAT that you're due. So move your VAT returns to monthly if you can. Obviously, speak to an accountant about it. I'm not an accountant and I don't profess to be at all. But speak to your accountant about it. Get them to deal with your VAT returns because all of that helps with your cash flow. So there's a couple of do's and don'ts there. And then moving on to something I mentioned in the last podcast, if you listen to the last one, which was about hurdles and challenges, don't rely on a family solicitor. So this is kind of covering the same point that we covered in the last one, but I think it's really important when it comes to development finance. Don't rely on your family solicitor that you've had for the last 10, 20, 30 years. Get yourself a really, really top level solicitor, someone who just knows their way around development finance like no one else. Speak to your broker, speak to your lender. They're going to be able to advise you of some good solicitors, but use a good solicitor, someone who knows what they're doing. Because when you're getting into development finance, you're dealing with millions and millions of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds if you're sort of on the smaller side, but you're potentially dealing with millions of pounds. And you need to be prepared for personal guarantees that are going to be in the millions. You're going to have to be prepared for debentures over limited companies. You're going to have to be prepared for some pretty in-depth terms because this isn't just like taking a buy-to-let mortgage where you sign the mortgage and go, yeah, great, okay, I've got a mortgage now. This is talking about, right, okay, I've got the day one facility, then I've also got a facility that I've got to draw down in arrears to cover my cash flow. If that cash flow goes wrong, have I got anything to go back at the lender on? I've got an 18-month term. What happens if I go over that 18-month term? Am I then going to get repossessed? Am I going to have default interest? All of these things, which a broker can sit and go through those numbers and those terms with you. But a solicitor will make sure you are legally covered, and they will make sure that you are covered if anything ever happens that you have to go back on. So that's a massive do and don't at the same time, I guess. Do get a good solicitor. Don't use a bad one, because I think it will set you up massively moving forward. The last one I want to cover just very quickly, and this is kind of, we've covered off obviously the stuff about the contractor, we've covered off the stuff about obviously the solicitor. The last one I want to cover is brokers. So the reason why I want to cover off brokers is because the amount of people we get come to us, we are very much specialised in development finance. We are not very good at buy-to-lets. We don't do residential mortgages, and there is a specific reason for that. And a lot of people look at it and they say, well, actually, I'm going to go to a resi broker for development finance because he says he can do it and he can put it through a third party and everything else. this is going to be some of the biggest finance that you ever take when it comes to raising property finance, development finance, refurb, bridges, etc. They are some of the most complex products out there on the market for a resi broker to deal with. Now, on the flip side, if someone put a residential mortgage in front of me, I would have no idea what I was doing. I would have no idea who to go to. I'd have no idea who to speak to. I'd have no idea what any of the terms meant whatsoever. I would sit there, I'd look, I'd go, yeah, that's a mortgage. I think I get it, but I don't really know. And that's the same for resi brokers who don't deal with development finance. So make sure you're using a specialist broker for whatever it is you're looking to do. Whether if you're buying your first house, use a residential broker. If you're buying your first development, use a development finance broker. Use someone who does this day in, day out, and who knows how to get you the best finance. But not only that, who knows which lenders to go to, because there is nothing worse than using a development finance lender who is essentially a bridging finance lender trying to be a development lender. Because the difference you have is a development finance lender will release you tranches in arrears, not based on valuation. Because as we all know, if you're doing a commercial conversion, if you're doing a development, the first couple of months, you are not adding value to that property whatsoever. If anything, in some circumstances, you're actually taking value away. So for the first 3 months, easily, most sites, most projects, most refurbs, most developments, you're actually removing value as opposed to adding value. If you go to a bridging lender, what they do is they release tranches based on value. So what they'll do is they'll say, right, we'll lend you 75%. And then what we're going to do is every time you come to us and you've done a set of works, we're going to go and do another valuation and we'll release you 75% of the new valuation. Okay, that's fine. I have a marking stick in the sand. I know what I'm going to. I'm 75% every time I go to that bridging lender. The difficulty you've got is for the first 3 months, you're going to go to that bridging lender who's portraying themselves as a development lender. You're going to say, right, I need 75% of the new valuation. They're going to come out and they're going to go, well, actually, the value's dropped because you've ripped out X, Y, Z. You've done X, Y, Z to the site. You've done whatever the case may be. And what happens then is you're left going, well, how do I finance this? What do I do? And that is where getting a good broker on board, you need that knowledge to be able to take you to the lender who's going to be able to deliver for you rather than whatever the highest commission is or fees are. So my last one is don't use a broker that doesn't specialize in the product that you're after. If you want development finance, use a development finance broker. If you want a residential mortgage, use a residential broker. They are specialized in their specialist areas for a reason. They know what they're doing. And that's one of the biggest things we get with development finance. I would say 75% of the inquiries we get are from people who have been to another broker and have then come to us and said, I really need your help. We're on the wrong product, which is a nightmare, trying to refinance someone off of a product if they're on the wrong product. Or they come to us and say, we've had this set of terms. Could you just look over it? Because obviously we go out and network a lot. I meet a lot of people. They'll come to us and say, right, we've had this set of terms. It looks like it's from a bridging lender. Can you just help us out? Because we're doing this multi-million-pound development deal and we think we're going to have a bit of a problem. And I'll look at it and say, yeah, okay, based on this, you're drawing down based on values as opposed to something else. So hopefully you found that really, really helpful. That's just a real whistle-stop tour of some do's and don'ts that we've found recently in development finance. Obviously, I could literally sit here for hours and hours and hours and hours and talk about all the do's and don'ts of development finance, but there's just three main subjects there. Get a good contractor, get a good lawyer, get a good broker, and that covers most of the do's and don'ts, I think, pretty quickly in terms of what you can and can't do in development finance. But on the next episode, we're going to cover getting the right team in place. So next week's episode will be all around getting that team in place, getting good people around you, and we'll talk in a bit more detail about how to find them as well. But until next time, thank you very much for watching and listening.